Connecticut delegation, which is incredible. I think on this issue and many others, you're the best delegation in the United States.
No guns were lost. They were stolen by an individual who's now in prison.
And of course, we've gotten a lot of criticism over this. So why is it not a machine gun?
In areas that are poor, mostly minority, there's a mass shooting. Today for the most significant law to be passed since then, since for the last 30 years.
Restrictions that New York passed on their statute about where you can have guns, places that don't have a sign.
No more hopes and prayers, thoughts and prayers. A vote is what we need.
Crime for someone who's already been convicted of a felony to possess any firearm.
And that's why gun owners wanted the Supreme Court to put the statute on hold. They have now said no.
Lock and load. Supreme Court fires unanimous decision on concealed carry laws, igniting controversy and shaping the future of firearms regulation. Background: the legal saga of New York State Rifle and Pistol Association v. Bruin revolves around the intricate landscape of concealed carry permitting laws in New York State. At the heart of this case lies the state's requirement that residents obtain a permit to carry firearms in public, a regulation that has sparked contentious debates and ignited legal battles. This case, with its origins in the quest for concealed carry permits, delves into the fundamental question of what constitutes a proper cause for carrying a firearm in public. New York State has long adhered to a stringent approach to concealed carry permits. Residents seeking such permits are mandated to demonstrate a legitimate and compelling reason, surpassing the mere threshold of personal preference. The concept of a proper cause demands that applicants establish a special need for carrying a firearm in public, a need that outweighs general concerns. Two individuals embarked on this regulatory journey, each seeking permission to carry concealed firearms for distinct reasons. One applicant argued that the surge of robberies in his neighborhood warranted the need for self-protection. The other applicant's rationale was centered on the broader purpose of self-defense. However, both faced denial of their permit applications, prompting them to rally under the banner of the New York State Rifle and Pistol Association and challenge the state's regulation. The pivotal juncture arrived as the case ascended through the legal hierarchy, culminating in a profound showdown at the Supreme Court of the United States. This legal battle encapsulates the broader debate surrounding the Second Amendment, individual rights, and the state's prerogative to regulate firearms for public safety.
It was challenged by gun owners. Now the U.S. Supreme Court is allowing New York to enforce this gun control law.
Yesterday, I spoke about the Supreme Court's shocking decision.
That is looking out and reading all the cases decided by the United States Court of Appeals and state Supreme Courts.
The essence of the case centers on the delicate balance between the individual's right to bear arms and the state's authority to safeguard its populace. The differing perspectives on what qualifies as a proper cause echo the nuanced complexities of gun regulations in a society grappling with the need to ensure public safety while respecting individual freedoms. New York State Rifle and Pistol Association v. Bruin represents a microcosm of the broader discourse that resonates across the nation, as the contours of the Second Amendment are tested against evolving notions of public welfare and personal rights. The Supreme Court's engagement in this case holds the potential to redefine the parameters of concealed carry permitting laws, with implications that could reverberate far beyond the borders of New York State. As the legal battle unfolds, it underscores the enduring importance of striking a judicious balance between individual liberties and collective security within the realm of firearms regulation.
The recent Supreme Court ruling concerning concealed carry laws has ignited a significant shift in the landscape of firearms regulations. In a landmark decision, the court struck down a state law that had previously prohibited non-residents from carrying concealed firearms within its borders. This ruling, with potentially far-reaching consequences, has set the stage for a potential chain reaction, potentially leading to the establishment of national concealed carry reciprocity. The ruling's origins stem from a Massachusetts district court case that has caught the attention of legal experts and gun rights advocates alike. Notably, this case marks one of the first instances in which a court leveraged the precedent set by the Supreme Court's decision in New York State Rifle and Pistol Association v. Bruin. In the 6-3 Bruin decision, the court had laid the groundwork by establishing a precedent that could be used to challenge state restrictions on non-resident firearm carrying. The case at hand involves an individual from New Hampshire who held a valid license to carry concealed in his home state. While traveling through Massachusetts, he encountered legal trouble after being pulled over for suspected DUI and was found to be in possession of a concealed firearm. Massachusetts law stipulates that non-residents cannot carry concealed without obtaining a specific non-resident concealed carry license from the state.
As many of you out there, either parents, relatives, and/or victims yourself,
to do anything about what the president is doing to exercise that authority unconstitutionally, as was the case with student loans.
Because people buy hundreds of guns legally and then they sell them illegally.
The central issue of the case centered around the constitutional validity of Massachusetts' requirement for non-residents to acquire a separate concealed carry license. The plaintiff, Mr. Dean Donald, argued that his existing New Hampshire license should be recognized under the Second Amendment's protection and allow him to carry within Massachusetts without the need for an additional license from the state. The district court's decision echoed Mr. Donald's claims and ruled that Massachusetts could not enforce its non-resident concealed carry license requirement against him. Citing the Bruin decision as a precedent, the court found that the state's law infringed upon the individual's Second Amendment rights and therefore could not be applied to him. This ruling holds significant implications not only for the individual involved, but also for the broader debate surrounding concealed carry laws and Second Amendment rights. As the first domino in what could be a series of challenges against state restrictions, this decision opens the door to a potential nationwide reciprocity for concealed carry permits. The echoes of this case may reverberate through future legal battles and discussions surrounding firearms regulation, emphasizing the intricate interplay between individual state laws and federal constitutional principles.
Concealed carry constitutional clash. The recent tragic event in Allen, Texas, where a gunman opened fire at an outdoor shopping mall, resulted in the loss of 8 lives, including 3 children, has once again highlighted the urgent need for discussions on gun control. The devastating bloodshed has sparked renewed efforts to tighten restriction on firearms. However, as the nation grapples with the aftermath of this incident, a parallel and equally significant conversation is taking place in the legal realm. While the public outcry for stricter gun regulation gains momentum, a series of court battles are simultaneously unfolding. These legal debates are centered around a fundamental question: where does the constitutional right to bear arms intersect with the government's authority to impose control on firearms ownership? The tension between individual rights and public safety is at the heart of this ongoing legal struggle. As discussions continue, a critical Supreme Court decision from last June looms large in the backdrop. This decision, which offered a broad interpretation of the Second Amendment of the Constitution, has heightened the intensity of these debates. The ruling has led to what some describe as an explosion in court challenges, significantly impacting the dynamics of the pro-gun movement. Advocates for stricter gun laws, like Nick Suplina from Everytown for Gun Safety, argue that this decision has emboldened those on the pro-gun side to contest nearly all aspects of gun safety regulations on the grounds of unconstitutionality. The implications of these court battles are far-reaching and extend beyond the immediate concerns of gun ownership. The outcome of these legal disputes could shape the trajectory of gun control for years to come, influencing not only the current generation, but also those that follow. This juncture is pivotal, as the interpretation of the Second Amendment may lead to challenges against crucial life-saving gun laws, creating a ripple effect across the nation's legal framework.
Strict limits on guns outside of a home. 2 Supreme Court justices say the New York law presents some serious questions.
Striking down Roe v. Wade. We've had a lot of discussion about that in our whole household.
To try to identify those cases that the Supreme Court might be interested in taking up and reviewing.
The foundation for this legal flux was laid by the Supreme Court's ruling in New York State Rifle and Pistol Association v. Bruin, which drew from the precedent set by District of Columbia v. Heller in 2008. This precedent clarified that the right to bear arms is not solely connected to militia service, separating the two concepts enshrined in the Second Amendment. The case in question directly challenged a New York law requiring gun owners to demonstrate a special need for carrying a firearm in public. The subsequent ruling declared this law unconstitutional, emphasizing that the right to bear arms is not confined to one's home. At the heart of this legal evolution is the interpretation of the Second Amendment's parameters. Conservative Supreme Court Justice Clarence Thomas, in the majority opinion, introduced a twofold test for new gun restrictions. First, the weapon under scrutiny must align with the Second Amendment scope. Second, any government-imposed limitations on the right to bear arms must be rooted in historical traditions of firearm regulations. However, this second requirement has proven contentious and disruptive to the implementation of effective gun control measures. The delicate balance between preserving constitutional rights and ensuring public safety has triggered debates on the interpretation of historical precedent. Overall, the recent tragic mass-laying incident has ignited both public and legal conversations about gun control. The Supreme Court's unanimous decision has injected new momentum into the debate, resulting in a surge of legal challenges and discussions on the extent of constitutional rights in the realm of firearm ownership. As court battles unfold, the nation stands at a crossroad, where the interpretation of the Second Amendment could shape the landscape of gun control for generations, with potential far-reaching consequences on state and federal legislations related to firearm ownership and restrictions. Supreme Court ruling reshapes. A recent groundbreaking Supreme Court ruling has led to a significant transformation in firearms regulation, specifically focusing on concealed carry legislation. The court invalidated a state law in a monumental verdict, reshaping the landscape of firearm limitations. Preceding this ruling was a regulation that prohibited non-residents from carrying concealed weapons within its jurisdiction. The ramifications of this decision are profound, potentially sparking a domino effect that could ultimately culminate in the establishment of concealed carry reciprocity across the nation. At the epicenter of this legal evolution lies a Massachusetts District Court case that has captured the attention of legal experts and advocates for gun rights alike. This case stands out as one of the earliest instances where a court leveraged the precedent set by the Supreme Court's decision in New York State Rifle and Pistol Association v. Bruin. In the 6-3 Bruin ruling, the court laid the groundwork by establishing a precedent that could be leveraged to challenge statutory restrictions on non-resident firearm ownership. The central figure in the current case is an individual hailing from New Hampshire, holding a valid concealed carry permit in his home state. However, his journey through Massachusetts proved to be problematic when he was pulled over on suspicion of DUI and a concealed firearm was discovered in his possession. According to Massachusetts law, non-residents are prohibited from carrying concealed weapons unless they obtain a specific concealed carry permit for non-residents. The crux of the case revolves around the constitutional validity of Massachusetts' requirement for non-residents to secure an additional concealed carry permit. The plaintiff, Dean Donald, argues that his existing license from New Hampshire should be recognized under the protection of the Second Amendment, thereby allowing him to carry within Massachusetts without the need for an additional state-issued permit.
Those laws will still be in effect until first the Court of Appeals hears it in New York.
And would like the government to transfer those firearms, which he doesn't possess himself.
The families who, in fact, were victimized by the gun shooting that we've seen.
And then ultimately, if the Supreme Court takes the case, the Supreme Court hears it in Washington.
In a resounding conclusion, the district court sided with Dean Donald's contentions, ruling that Massachusetts could not enforce the necessity of a concealed carry permit for non-residents against him. Citing the precedent set by the Bruin decision, the court found that the state's law encroached upon the individual's Second Amendment's right and, as such, could not be applied to him. This ruling carries profound implications not only for Dean Donald, but also for the broader discourse on Second Amendment rights and concealed carry regulations. It marks the inaugural step toward a potential series of challenges to state restrictions, possibly paving the way for a nationwide reciprocity concerning concealed carry licenses. The echoes of this case are likely to reverberate in future court battles and discussions surrounding gun control, underscoring the intricate interplay between state laws and federal constitutional principles. Historical analogies redefining. The recent Supreme Court decision on concealed carry laws has triggered a meticulous re-examination of historical traditions, calling for a fresh understanding of the notion of historical tradition as it pertains to the Second Amendment and modern-day gun regulations. In a groundbreaking ruling, Supreme Court Justice Clarence Thompson provided critical insight into the interpretation of this term, prompting legal scholars and advocates alike to delve into centuries-old legal precedents to find analogous measures that once regulated weaponry. Justice Thomas's perspective hinges on a clear historical context, dating back to the time when the Second Amendment was ratified in 1791, and even when the 14th Amendment was ratified in 1868. These amendments laid the groundwork for understanding the scope of federal versus state laws. Notably, the 14th Amendment stipulates that state laws cannot supersede federal laws, establishing a legal framework that forms an integral part of the modern debate on firearms. The intricacies of Justice Thomas's interpretation go beyond the mere duplication of historical regulations. While modern gun restrictions aren't required to have a direct historical counterpart, they must be demonstrated to be analogous to past regulations. Justice Thomas did not explicitly specify the precise time frame from which this analogy should be drawn, leaving legal experts to sift through legal history in search of comparable measures that historically restricted weaponry. This quest has led to a fascinating journey through centuries-old US and English law, as lawyers and scholars delve into the past to uncover regulations that mirror contemporary efforts to control firearms. In some instances, advocates for gun control have pointed to ban on unconventional weapons, like billy clubs, while others have turned to historical examples of laws that targeted specific groups deemed dangerous, including free black individuals, indigenous communities, and Catholics. One critical aspect that surfaced from Justice Thomas's interpretation is the recognition that the historical regulations under scrutiny must date back to the late 1700s or perhaps the 1800s. This raises a unique challenge in reconciling regulations from an era vastly different from the modern day, characterized by distinct problems and markedly dissimilar technological advancements. Eric Rubin, an assistant professor at Southern Methodist University's Dedman School of Law, encapsulates the complexities of this endeavor, highlighting that the historical regulations that now need to be presented to justify the constitutionality of modern gun laws are not those from a mere century ago. Instead, they need to be traced back to an era where societal contexts, challenges, and technological landscape were remarkably divergent. The implications of this ruling reverberate through legal circles, government bodies, and advocacy groups. The requirement to establish an analogy between past and present gun regulations challenges both lawmakers and courts, striving to bridge the gap between historical regulations and contemporary concerns of a formidable task, one that necessitates a creative and nuanced approach. This process demands the careful navigation of a legal landscape that juxtaposes the intentions of centuries-old laws with the pressing needs of today's society. The ruling not only shapes the current discourse on firearms, but also extends its influence to broader discussions surrounding the interpretation of constitutional rights in an evolving world. The quest for historical analogies exemplifies the dynamic nature of legal interpretation, where principles enshrined in centuries-old documents are brought to life and reinterpreted in the context of contemporary challenges. In conclusion, the Supreme Court's recent ruling has illuminated the concept of historical tradition in the realm of gun regulations, mandating a deeper exploration of regulations from the late 1700s and 1800s to serve as analogies for modern gun laws. This interpretive journey has propelled legal professionals into the annals of history as they unearth past regulations to draw parallels to present concerns. The process is intricate, demanding a delicate balance between historical context and present realities, ultimately shaping the trajectory of the ongoing debate on gun control and constitutional rights. Dean Donald Case, a recent landmark decision handed down by the Lowell District Court in Massachusetts, has the potential to reshape the landscape of concealed carry laws, potentially paving the way for nationwide reciprocity. Dean Donald, the defendant in this case, stands accused of violating Massachusetts law by carrying a firearm without the requisite permit. His legal challenge rests on three primary objections: a facial challenge arguing the unconstitutionality of the law itself, an as-applied challenge asserting its illegality as applied to his circumstances, and a claim that the law breaches the prohibition on cruel and unusual punishment. At the heart of this case lies the reverberations of the Supreme Court's recent rulings in New York State Rifle and Pistol Association v. Bruin. This ruling has fundamentally shifted the terrain of Second Amendment interpretation, altering the dynamics of challenges to gun legislation's legality. The Lowell District Court recognizes the Bruin's decision's pivotal role in not only establishing a nexus between the Second Amendment and contemporary gun control laws, but also in creating a framework to evaluate their constitutionality. Central to the case's implication is the question of how the Bruin's decision influences the extent of an individual's right to carry firearms across state lines. The case at hand delves into a scenario where a law-abiding citizen from New Hampshire exercises his Second Amendment rights while traveling to Massachusetts. To adjudicate such situations, the courts must employ the two-step analytical approach introduced in Bruin. Initially, the judges ascertain whether the individual's action align with the literal language of the Second Amendment. Should this be the case, any additional government-imposed restrictions must then be justified within the context of the nation's historical tradition of regulating weaponry.
Saying you can bring a gun in here, you can't go into with a gun.
Mr. Henderson turned over his firearms to the FBI before he was convicted.
And that's why gun owners wanted the Supreme Court to put the statute on hold. They have now said no.
This morning, though, we're here on a critical issue, gun violence.
Dean Donald's predicament is rooted in his status as a New Hampshire resident with a valid concealed carry permit issued by his home state. Conversely, Massachusetts law dictates that non-residents must secure a distinct concealed carry license. Donald's contention is that when applied to him, the Massachusetts statute infringes upon his constitutional rights. This legal battle not only probes the boundaries of Second Amendment protections, but also delves into the implications of varying state-level gun laws. However, the ramifications of the Dean Donald case transcends its specific circumstances. Drawing upon the Bruin precedent, the court challenges the prevailing landscape of state-specific concealed carry regulations, potentially signaling the commencement of a wave of judicial challenges against such laws. This pivotal case served as a catalyst for advocating a pathway to national concealed carry reciprocity. Such a paradigm shift could simplify regulations for those seeking to carry concealed firearms across state boundaries, harmonizing the divergent laws that currently exist. In essence, the Lowell District Court's decision in the Dean Donald case has marked a pivotal juncture in the ongoing discourse surrounding Second Amendment rights and concealed carry regulations. By invoking the Bruin case, the court not only questions the status quo of state-specific legislations, but also underscores the importance of comprehending constitutional rights within a dynamic legal milieu. This decision is poised to influence future legal disputes and policy discussions, with a spotlight on the potential realization of national concealed carry reciprocity.
Concealed carry ruling impact. In a groundbreaking legal development, the Lowell District Court in Massachusetts has issued a pivotal ruling with potential ramifications for national concealed carry reciprocity. The case involves defendant Dean Donald, who faces charges under Massachusetts law for carrying a firearm without a license. Donald has put forth 3 key challenges to the law: a facial challenge arguing its unconstitutionality on its face, an as-applied challenge claiming its unconstitutionality as applied to him, and a contention that it violates protection against cruel and unusual punishment. Central to the case is the Supreme Court's recent decision in New York State Rifle and Pistol Association v. Bruin, which has reshaped the landscape of Second Amendment interpretation and challenges to firearms statutes' constitutionality. The court acknowledges the pivotal role of the Bruin decision in redefining the relationship between the Second Amendment and existing firearms regulations, creating a framework for evaluating their constitutionality. A critical question is how the Bruin decision impacts the rights of individuals to carry firearms across state lines. Specifically, the case considers a scenario where a law-abiding resident of New Hampshire exercises Second Amendment rights while traveling in Massachusetts. Bruin's two-step analysis framework comes into play. Courts must first determine if an individual's conduct falls within the plain text of the Second Amendment. If it does, Any government regulation must then be justified in line with the nation's historical tradition of firearms regulation. Donald's challenge revolves around his New Hampshire residency and possession of a valid concealed carry license from his home state. In contrast, Massachusetts law requires non-residents to obtain a separate concealed carry license. His as-applied challenge contends that the Massachusetts law encroaches upon his constitutional rights. This argument delves into the extent of the Second Amendment's reach and the implications of differing firearms regulations across states.
We can expect in the future that more people will be carrying handguns on the streets in places like Los Angeles, Boston, and New York City.
The broader impact of this ruling extends beyond the individual case. By leveraging the Bruin decision, the court challenges the prevailing landscape of state-specific concealed carry laws, potentially triggering a series of legal challenges against such regulations. This case could serve as a catalyst for the movement towards national concealed carry reciprocity, streamlining regulations for those seeking to carry concealed firearms across state lines. Overall, the Lowell District Court's ruling in the Dean Donald case has brought about a pivotal moment in discussions about Second Amendment rights, concealed carry laws, and the potential for a unified firearms regulatory framework. By invoking the Bruin decision, the court challenges the status quo of state-specific regulations and underscores the need for a comprehensive understanding of constitutional rights within an evolving legal context. As the echoes of this ruling resonate in future legal battles and policy debates, the prospect of national concealed carry reciprocity emerges as a subject of intense scrutiny and deliberation. Historical precedent in gun rights. In the context of Second Amendment rights and concealed carry regulations, a recent court ruling has spotlighted the pivotal role of historical precedent in determining the constitutionality of firearms regulations. The court's decision, which closely scrutinized the case of a defendant, underscores the obligation of the government to establish historical grounding in order to limit an individual's exercise of Second Amendment rights. At the crux of the matter is the government's responsibility to demonstrate a historical precedent that aligns with the regulation at hand. The court emphasizes that the government's burden entails tracing historical traditions that existed prior to, during, and subsequent to the founding of the nation. Such traditions should reflect a comparable pattern of regulation, which, if proven, could exempt the regulation from the Second Amendment's categorical command. The ruling elaborates that the defendant's conduct involving carrying a firearm unequivocally falls under the protection of the Second Amendment. Consequently, the burden shifts to the Commonwealth to validate the regulation by establishing its alignment with the historical trajectory of firearms regulation in the country.
June of 2021, you changed the department's asylum rules so that it could apply to individuals with significant gang violence.
Most apparent here a defense of the Second Amendment, which this most certainly is.
Weim says the Missouri law exposes people to greater harm by interfering with the federal government's ability to enforce firearms regulations.
The court critically notes that the Commonwealth fails to present any historical precedent that confines the exercise of a federal constitutional right, such as carrying firearms, solely within the borders of the resident state. The court's assessment of the Commonwealth's arguments against the defendant's claim of equal protection violations is equally compelling. Prior to the precedent-setting Bruin decision, Massachusetts treated firearm carrying as a privilege. The distinction in treatment between residents and non-residents was pronounced, with non-residents being allowed to apply for licenses while not being afforded the same privileges as residents. The Commonwealth's contention that its licensing scheme imposes permissible burdens due to its interests in preventing certain individuals from possessing firearms is met with skepticism. The court draws attention to the existing federal law, 18 U.S.C. Section 922G, which already identifies categories of prohibited individuals nationwide. Given this federal legislation's applicability across the entire country, the court rebuffs the argument that Massachusetts regulation adds a justifiable layer of burden. Ultimately, the court concludes that the mere act of an individual lawfully exercising their constitutional right to bear arms while traversing through Massachusetts as a resident of New Hampshire should not render them a felon. The court underscores that the recent Bruin decision has established a precedent necessitating the issuance of licenses unless specific disqualifications are present. In this district court ruling, Massachusetts' attempt to enforce non-resident concealed carry licenses faces comprehensive scrutiny and ultimate rejection. The court's meticulous analysis highlights the interplay between historical precedent, federal legislation, and the categorical assertion of Second Amendment rights. As the legal landscape evolves, this decision leaves a notable imprint on the discourse surrounding firearms regulations and the constitutional guarantees that shape them. Crossing state lines. The court's decision highlights an unprecedented constitutional dilemma surrounding the right to bear arms when crossing state lines. The ruling sharply illuminates an extraordinary circumstance, a constitutional right that dissipates as an individual crosses their home state's border and enters another state. This peculiar scenario is exemplified by an individual who, while legally exercising their right within their own state, instantly transforms into a felon subject to a mandatory minimum sentence of incarceration upon entering another state.
Lawful gun owners are not the driving force behind criminal gun violence, and this is particularly true of concealed carry permit holders.
AK-47 is an automatic Kalashnikov model of 1947.
At the same time, as I outline in much greater detail in my written submission, they play a significant but underappreciated role.
You can prevent the next tragedy. You can save life. You can save families in the process.
This decision raises profound questions about the cohesiveness and consistency of constitutional rights across state lines. It not only showcases the perplexing nature of this constitutional anomaly, but also marks a milestone in legal history, potentially setting in motion a cascade of legal challenges to state laws in the context of concealed carry reciprocity. The outcome of these challenges remains uncertain, but their impact on the evolving discourse surrounding the Second Amendment and interstate gun rights is undeniable. Constitutional dilemma. The recent state-level trial court decision regarding the constitutional dilemma of concealed carry rights across state lines is a pivotal development that sparks discussions about legal precedents and potential nationwide implications.
That brewing is a thing from which the public must be protected. This is simply not true.
So other families will not have the experience and the pain and trauma that they had to live through.
For too long, states like New York told millions of citizens that their right to armed self-defense ended the moment they left their homes.
She proves you can run for office ending gun violence in the South and you can win.
While the immediate outcome of this case remains uncertain, its impact on the discourse surrounding the Second Amendment and interstate gun rights is undeniable. Overall, this trial court decision's broader implications underscore the potential for significant legal change, driven by the interplay between state and federal laws. As the case progresses through the state-level judiciary and potentially reaches the U.S. Supreme Court, it exemplifies the legal system's responsiveness to contemporary issues and evolving perspectives on constitutional rights. Whether it will be the catalyst for a shift towards national concealed carry reciprocity or simply a localized precedent remains to be seen. However, its resonance within the legal sphere is undeniable, sparking conversations about the cohesiveness of constitutional rights in a nation characterized by diverse state regulations. Public safety concerns. In the aftermath of the recent groundbreaking Supreme Court decision to eliminate concealed carry laws, a pressing concern that emerges is the potential impact on public safety. The ruling, which dismantles state restrictions on concealed carry, raises questions about how this shift might influence the safety landscape across the nation. With the removal of concealed carry laws, the concern centers on the potential for an increase in armed individuals carrying firearms without the previously mandated permits or background checks. While the decision underscores Second Amendment rights, critics fear that it could also pave the way for an environment where firearms are more accessible without the rigorous checks and balances that concealed carry laws once provided. The newfound ability for non-residents to carry concealed firearms across state lines could lead to challenges in tracking and regulating armed individuals, particularly those visiting from states with more lenient firearms regulations. This raises alarm bells about the ease with which potentially dangerous individuals might carry firearms without undergoing the vetting processes that were previously in place. Another dimension of the debate pertains to law enforcement's ability to distinguish between lawful and unlawful firearm carriers. The decision to eliminate concealed carry laws might create confusion and complicate the efforts of law enforcement officers tasked with maintaining public safety. Officers may need to adapt their protocols and approaches to engage with individuals who might be legally armed under the new legal landscape. However, proponents of the ruling argue that responsible firearm owners contribute to public safety as they possess the means to protect themselves and potentially deter criminal activity. They contend that the ruling aligns with the fundamental right to self-defense and levels the playing field for individuals seeking to safeguard themselves and their loved ones.
We are not finished. We are not finished. We are not finished.
The submitted firearm brace, when attached to a firearm, does not convert that weapon to be fired from the shoulder and would not alter the classification.
Not one more! Not one more! Not one more!
Distribution of 10 to 40 million of these braces and the implementation of your rule. Did Congress pass a law?
Yet the concern remains that the elimination of concealed carry laws might blur the line between responsible gun ownership and potential risks to public safety. The absence of uniform regulations across states could lead to a patchwork of differing standards that law enforcement agencies and citizens must navigate. As a result, states with stricter gun control measures may find themselves grappling with the challenge of reconciling their regulations with those of neighboring states with more permissive policies. In decision, the Supreme Court's decision to eliminate concealed carry laws opens a discourse on the intricate balance between Second Amendment rights and public safety considerations. While proponents hail the ruling as a victory for individual liberties, critics express concerns about the potential for heightened risks in an environment with less stringent regulations. The evolving landscape will undoubtedly prompt ongoing discussions about responsible gun ownership, state-to-state reciprocity, and the imperative of maintaining public safety amidst the reshaped legal framework. Voices of dissent. The recent Supreme Court decision eliminating concealed carry laws has ignited a spirited exchange of opinions among the justices, reflecting a broader divergence in perspectives on Second Amendment interpretation. The ruling, which appends state restrictions on concealed carry, has garnered both support and dissent, underscoring the nuanced complexities of constitutional interpretation. In a deeply divided court, the justices' varied opinions offer insights into the ideological underpinnings that shape their stance on firearms regulation. Those supporting the decision emphasize the importance of upholding the individual's right to bear arms without unnecessary hindrances. They contend that the ruling is rooted in safeguarding personal liberties, allowing law-abiding citizens the means to protect themselves and their families without undue government intrusion. Conversely, the dissenting voices voice concerns about potential implications for public safety. Justices in this camp worried that the ruling might open the floodgates for individuals to carry firearms without undergoing the scrutiny that concealed carry laws formerly required. They emphasize the need to strike a balance between Second Amendment rights and ensuring that responsible gun ownership is aligned with rigorous background checks and permitting processes.
And having to tell her that other 9-year-olds were just killed in a shooting is horrific.
Get on the ground now!
I'm a federal agent.
917-110-3.
I'm a federal agent.
Get on the ground!
Real background checks could stop a lot of illegal guns going in different places in the country.
For them, the ruling might inadvertently weaken the safeguards in place to prevent firearms from falling into the wrong hands. This divergence highlights the inherent complexity of Second Amendment jurisprudence. Justices' opinions are shaped by their interpretations of historical context, the intention of the framers, and contemporary societal considerations. The ruling's impact on law enforcement, public safety, and the broader fabric of society are subjects that weigh heavily on the minds of these legal scholars as they grapple with the broader implications of their decision. Firearms regulation paradigm shift. The Supreme Court's decision to eliminate concealed carry laws heralds a significant paradigm shift in the realm of firearms regulation. This watershed moment is poised to reverberate across states, sparking discussions about how the legal landscape might evolve and what lies ahead for Second Amendment rights and gun control measures. The ruling ushers in a new era in which non-residents are granted expanded concealed carry rights, a prospect that is met with both enthusiasm and trepidation. Proponents hail it as a triumph for individual freedoms and the right to self-defense, asserting that responsible gun owners can act as a deterrent to criminal activity. However, the decision's critics fear that it could undermine the delicate balance between individual rights and public safety by potentially allowing firearms to circulate without robust regulatory oversight. As states grapple with the ruling's implications, the question of reciprocity takes center stage. the concept of national concealed carry reciprocity, in which states honor the concealed carry licenses issued by other states, gains renewed attention. This seismic shift raises concerns about discrepancies between states with strict firearms regulations and those with more permissive laws. The potential for a patchwork of varying standards underscores the complexity of harmonizing the divergent regulatory frameworks. Law enforcement agencies are faced with the challenge of adapting to this altered landscape. Officers may need to recalibrate their approaches to engage with legally armed individuals, given the variance in licensing requirements and regulations across state lines. This recalibration is essential to ensure both public safety and the rights of law-abiding citizens. In decision, the Supreme Court's decision triggers a reevaluation of firearms regulation on a national scale. The ruling's implications extend beyond the courtroom, transcending into the fabric of society and law enforcement practices. As the legal and societal discourse unfolds, the path ahead remains uncertain. What is certain, however, is that the decision marks a defining moment in the ongoing dialogue about the delicate balance between individual liberties and collective security in the context of firearms regulation. Rights in focus. The recent Supreme Court ruling, which annuls concealed carry laws, has thrown the spotlight on the delicate interplay between Second Amendment rights and public safety. This landmark decision, echoing through legal corridors, brings into sharp focus the rights of individuals to bear arms versus the imperative of maintaining societal security. The annulment of concealed carry laws reflects a seismic shift in the understanding of the Second Amendment. Proponents of the ruling champion it as a victory for individual liberties, contending that responsible citizens should have unfettered access to firearms for self-defense. Yet the implications are far-reaching. Critics of the ruling voice concerns about a potential surge in unregulated firearm possession, potentially undermining painstakingly established protocols to prevent firearms from landing in the hands of those unfit to possess them. The decision's significance reverberates beyond the courtroom, necessitating a careful recalibration of law enforcement practices. Police officers must now navigate encounters with legally armed individuals under a new legal framework. This recalibration aims to balance individual rights with public safety imperatives, underlining the evolving nature of policing in a nation grappling with changing gun regulations. Behind the verdict. Delving into the rationale behind the Supreme Court's decision to eliminate concealed carry laws unveils a complex tangle of constitutional interpretation, historical context, and societal implications. The court's ruling reflects a deeply divided bench, with justices articulating divergent perspectives on the boundaries of Second Amendment rights and the role of regulations. The ruling, rooted in the precedent set by the Bruin decision, underscores the evolving nature of firearms regulation. Justices supporting the decision emphasize the preservation of individual liberties, maintaining that responsible gun owners are crucial for personal protection and deterring criminal activity.
Shall not be infringed, and the word infringe means by banning parts on firearms actually is against the Constitution.
Affect us here, and it was such a breath of fresh air for the Second Amendment people.
It takes extraordinary courage for them to stand up here and retell the story.
Anti-gunners put in there to keep the guns out of the hands of lawful citizens in New York State.
On the other hand, dissenting justices raise flags about the potential erosion of safeguards against unchecked firearm possession and its implications for public safety. This decision holds the potential to catalyze a broader re-examination of gun laws across states, with the question of reciprocity looming large. As the nation grapples with the intricacies of this transformation, the ruling's ramifications ripple across legal, law enforcement, and societal spheres. The ruling and its aftermath are emblematic of the perpetual tension between safeguarding individual rights and ensuring the collective safety of the community. Second Amendment interpretations. The recent Supreme Court decision resonates with the deep cultural divides that shape the U.S.'s interpretation of the Second Amendment. This ruling, nullifying concealed carry laws, amplifies the clash between divergent viewpoints on gun rights and public safety. Proponents of the decision view it as a triumph for individual freedoms, emphasizing the historical significance of an armed citizenry as a safeguard against tyranny. This perspective aligns with a cultural thread rooted in self-reliance and personal protection. Conversely, opponents express concerns about the potential for increased firearm accessibility without stringent regulations. This viewpoint resonates with a cultural inclination toward collective security and preventing gun violence. The decision magnifies the enduring tension between these cultural inclinations. It underscores the complexity of reconciling personal liberties with broader societal well-being. The ensuing discourse will navigate these cultural divides, shaping the nation's ongoing dialogue about the Second Amendment's parameters and its impact on American life.
Aftermath of Bruin ruling. The aftermath of the Supreme Court's Bruin ruling has given rise to unforeseen consequences, shaping legal battles and stirring debates surrounding the delicate balance between gun rights and public safety. As the courts grapple with the interpretation of historical tradition in the context of the Second Amendment, a wave of challenges to existing gun restrictions has emerged, igniting a fierce dialogue that transcends state boundaries. In the immediate 8 months following the landmark Bruin decision, an analysis conducted by Jacob Charles, an associate professor at Pepperdine Caruso School of Law, unveiled a starting trend. A total of 212 claims challenging pre-existing gun restrictions, all anchored in the Bruin ruling, were adjudicated in courts across the United States. Among these claims, at least 31 received a favorable verdict, effectively challenging a diverse array of regulations such as licensing requirements for gun carry, bans on assault weapons, and the prohibition of untraceable ghost guns. The scope of the impact becomes evident through recent instances where pro-gun groups strategically invoked a Bruin ruling. In an emergency appeal to the Supreme Court, these groups sought to halt Illinois' newly enacted ban on assault-style firearms and large-capacity magazines. Their contention rested on the assertion that no historical analog exists for such a ban, positioning the Bruin precedent as the pivotal instrument in their argument. However, the case's outcome is far from predictable, with its ramifications potentially shaping the trajectory of bans on assault-style firearms across the nation. The legal terrain further amplifies its complexity with the controversial ruling from the Fifth Circuit District Court. This ruling struck down a federal law that prohibited individuals accused of domestic misuse, who were subject to protective orders, from possessing firearms. This particular judgment triggered a clash within the legal community, prompting the Biden administration to petition the Supreme Court for its intervention. This decision contradicts several other rulings, casting uncertainty over its validity and underscoring the polarizing nature of the debate surrounding gun rights. Amidst the legal tug-of-war, a vulnerable group remains at the crossroads of these battles. Surviving of domestic misuse. Mariam Durrani, the Vice President of Policy at the National Domestic Violence Hotline, accentuates the dire implications of these legal dynamics on survivors. In cases where protective orders have been granted, the existing ambiguity poses a grave risk. In states like Mississippi, despite receiving protective orders, individuals accused of domestic misuse can legally retain their firearms, potentially endangering the lives of survivors. This unsettling environment exacerbates an already precarious situation for domestic misuse survivors. Leaving an offensive relationship or taking steps to do so is often the most dangerous juncture, a time when the risk of homicide significantly escalates. The lack of clarity in firearms possession only adds to their vulnerability, creating a distressing scenario where legal ambiguities intersect with personal safety. Stark statistics illuminate the urgency of addressing this issue. Data from the National Domestic Violence Hotline reveals a startling 56.6%.
You know who cannot afford to wait? The single mom looking to protect herself and her children from a violent ex who has just been released from jail.
It funds crisis intervention, including red flag laws. It keeps guns out of the hands of people who are a danger to themselves.
About 3% of the sales. But we are talking about the 100% of a life being snuffed out.
Who needs to register as a federally licensed gun dealer and run background checks before selling a single weapon?
Dissenting voices. The recent Supreme Court decision in New York State Rifle and Pistol Association v. Bruin, which eliminated concealed carry laws, has set the stage for a profound exchange of opinions within the court. These dissenting voices represent the nuanced intricacies surrounding the intersection of firearm regulation, individual rights, and the imperative of public safety. As the legal landscape grapples with the implications of this landmark decision, the divergent perspectives of the dissenting justices offer a comprehensive view of the complexities involved. At the heart of the dissenting opinions lies a robust emphasis on the ramifications for public health and safety. The justices who dissented assert that the discourse around firearms cannot be disentangled from the broader context of gun violence's societal impact. This perspective emphasizes the crucial consideration of public health evidence and data when evaluating the consequences of dismantling concealed carry laws. The majority opinion, according to these dissenting voices, overlooks this pivotal aspect, raising concerns about an incomplete assessment of the potential fallout of such a decision. Justice Alito's concurring opinion serves as a prominent example of skepticism towards public health evidence. His stance dismisses carry law in light of the Buffalo shooting epitomizes this dismissive approach. This sentiment is mirrored in other concurring opinions as well, collectively underscoring a tendency to understate the role of public health evidence. The dissenting voices, on the other hand, assert the intrinsic link between firearms regulation and public health outcomes. They contend that the court must not overlook evidence-backed laws that can effectively mitigate gun violence. By doing so, the dissenters underscore the role of judicial review in safeguarding public safety while respecting constitutionally enshrined rights. A recurring theme within the dissenting opinion centers on the shift away from a traditionally recognized approach to judicial restraint. This doctrine dictates the courts should exercise caution in striking down laws that were enacted democratically to achieve significant objectives. The abolition of concealed carry laws, in the eyes of the dissenters, signifies a departure from this established tradition, prompting questions about the potential assertiveness of striking down laws that emerged through democratic processes. Nevertheless, the dissenting voices acknowledge that the majority opinion invokes the exceptional significance of the Second Amendment as justification for not deferring to legislative decisions. Justice Thomas, writing for the majority, alludes to the idea that certain individuals' rights are too momentous to be subject to legislative deference. However, this justification's clarity remains a subject of scrutiny within the dissenting camp, as they question the rationale behind the departure from well-established principles of judicial review.
Today, we say more than enough. We say more than enough.
No Democrat has ever tried to get anybody's guns. I mean, that's just a lie that they tell, and y'all ought to stop perpetuating the lie.
Time when this seems impossible to get anything done in Washington, we are doing something consequential.
To pass legislation that will do nothing to make Americans safer, but target our Second Amendment and our, sacred God-given liberties.
The nuanced interplay between law, individual rights, and public health underscores the deeper repercussions of the decision. From a public health perspective, the elimination of concealed carry laws sparks pertinent questions. The removal of requirements for demonstrating proper cause and obtaining permits could lead to more individuals carrying firearms without undergoing rigorous background checks. This newfound freedom to carry across state lines introduces the challenge of tracking and regulating armed individuals, potentially compromising public safety. The dissenting opinions portend a broader impact on the public health and safety landscape. The expansion of the Second Amendment scope beyond the home and the formulation of a new test for evaluating its restrictions could trigger an upsurge in litigation. This surge may challenge gun laws that are backed by robust evidence, such as permit-to-purchase laws, extreme risk protection order laws, safe storage laws, and minimum age laws. The dissenting voices signal an era of increased scrutiny on gun laws, presenting the potential for substantial implications for public health and safety. In the wake of the concealed carry ruling, the tensions between individual rights, public safety imperatives, and public health considerations are palpable. The divergent voices within the court reflect the intricate nature of constitutional interpretation, offering insights into the broader ramifications of this momentous decision. As the legal landscape adapts to the consequences of the ruling, the ongoing discourse will revolve around achieving a harmonious equilibrium between Second Amendment rights and the exigencies of public health and safety. The complexities of this discussion are a testament to the delicate balance that must be struck in shaping the future trajectory of firearms regulations in the United States. New York's response to Bruen. In the aftermath of the groundbreaking Supreme Court decision in New York State Rifle and Pistol Association v. Bruen, New York State took swift and significant action to address the potential ramifications of the ruling. Governor Kathy Hochul's proactive approach led to the convening of an extraordinary session of the Senate and Assembly on July 1, 2022, resulting in the signing of the Concealed Carry Improvement Act into law. New York's response to the Bruen decision marks a pivotal moment in the ongoing discourse surrounding firearms regulation and public safety. This comprehensive legislative package, which comes into effect on September 1, 2022, introduces a range of measures aimed at balancing Second Amendment rights with the imperative of safeguarding the well-being of the public. The Concealed Carry Improvement Act represents a proactive and multifaceted approach to addressing the concerns arising from the Bruen decision. A central focus of the legislation is a delineation of sensitive locations where the carrying of firearms in public is prohibited. This nuanced provision, captured in the new Penal Law 265.01-E, designates a diverse array of places where individuals cannot carry firearms, emphasizing the importance of maintaining safety in areas with high foot traffic and vulnerable populations.
As a condition of gaining bail before trial, the government has kept possession of the firearms ever since then.
You know, I'm about to sign into law bipartisan gun safety legislation.
Notable among the listed locations are places of worship, educational institutions, courthouses, government buildings, public transportation, health and medical facilities, shelters, daycare facilities, and public gatherings like demonstrations and rallies. This delineation aims to strike a balance between individual rights and public safety considerations, reflecting New York's commitment to preserving the well-being of its citizens. The legislation takes into account privately owned property and premises, recognizing the significance of property owners' autonomy in determining firearm regulations within their spaces. In the context of office buildings and similar locations, the law establishes a default provision that restricts the carrying of firearms unless the property owner or lessee explicitly permits it through conspicuous signage. This approach acknowledges the varying preferences of property owners while ensuring that firearm regulations are clear and accessible to those entering their premises. Concealed carry permit requirements. New York's response to Bruen's decision involves an enhancement of concealed carry permit requirements to bolster accountability and safety. These amendments aim to establish a rigorous framework that prioritizes both firearm owner responsibility and public well-being. The expansion of permit requirements to include 4 character references, firearm safety training courses, live fire testing, in-person interviews, and social media history from the past 3 years underscores the commitment to thorough vetting. By demanding a comprehensive assessment of applicants, New York seeks to ensure that concealed carry permits are granted only to individuals who have demonstrated a commitment to responsible firearm ownership. The legislative response to the Bruen decision introduces stricter disqualifications for obtaining a concealed carry permit. Individuals who documented instances of violent behavior, certain misdemeanor convictions, alcohol-related offenses, recent drug-related treatment, and recent involuntary commitment to mental health facilities are now excluded from obtaining permits. Additionally, the legislation mandates that licenses be recertified or renewed every 3 years, coupled with rigorous background checks conducted by New York's Division of Criminal Justice Services. This focus on regular re-evaluation and background checks aim to ensure that permit holders continue to meet the criteria for responsible firearm ownership. Recognizing the importance of safe firearm storage, the legislation requires guns to be securely stored at home if a person under 18 resides there. This provision underscores the responsibility of firearm owners to prevent unauthorized access, particularly in households with minors. Furthermore, the legislation redefines body vests to encompass a broader range of bullet-resistant protective equipment, including hard body armor. This expansion reflects New York's commitment to adapting its laws to emerging firearm technologies and threats.
Crime for someone who's already been convicted of a felony to possess any firearm.
Implemented by states, my administration is going to focus on how they administer it and whether or not they violate other laws.
To bolster the robustness of firearm regulation, New York's response involves the state taking the lead in conducting background checks that encompass both state and local records, in addition to the FBI's National Instant Criminal Background Check System. This comprehensive approach to background checks underscores the state's dedication to thorough vetting of applicants. Moreover, the legislation introduces background checks for the sale of ammunition, adding an extra layer of accountability to the ammunition purchasing process. New York's response to the Bruen decision is a testament to the state's commitment to public safety while respecting individual Second Amendment rights. The comprehensive legislative package seeks to strike a balance between these considerations, acknowledging the evolving landscape of firearm ownership and its implications for the well-being of New York's residents. As the nation continues to grapple with the broader implications of the Bruen decision, New York's response stands as a notable example of a proactive approach to firearm regulation that prioritizes the safety and security of its citizens. That's all for this video, folks. See you next time.